Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy holiday season. Welcome back. Maximize Monday. I think I was on last week. I don't remember. It's that time of year. I don't remember my schedule. It all just blurs from December 1st until honestly, like January 15th is like a big block of just like time where I don't know what's going on. I'm working, I'm not working. Kids are home, kids not home. My wife's
Yeah.
home. It's just a mess. But welcome. That aside, welcome back. As you probably know, I have two familiar faces here with me. Last time we did this, we had the best intentions of going over these 8 questions, and I think we got to like three of them because when the three of us get together, the conversation just kind of goes in different directions, and that's better for the show than like sticking to a script or anything. So, Tyrina, Katy, they're back, and we're going to talk about transitioning from the classroom into something new. Both of you have a pretty firm hold in terms of what you do to assist transitioning educators. Tyrina, it's a lot of coaching services, resume, interview prep, and Katy on the recruitment side of things. So thank you both for being here during this busy time of year.
No problem.
Thanks for
Happy to be
having us.
here.
Of course, of course. So we alluded to it before the show when we were chatting, and just kind of this time of year. And I'll pass it to both of you, but this is kind of the time of the year where it's been a few months now. Teachers are back in the classroom, and at the same time, they might have known since last school year that they wanted to make a change. Didn't happen just yet, so they're like, okay, winter break's coming. I'm going into job search mode when I have some time to actually do this. Or maybe they just came to a decision based on recent events of like, hey, I want to make a change now. So that being said, the winter break is kind of a tricky time for that because you have this extra time to dedicate to a job search. But we've said this before, job searching is a second job altogether. So you want to make sure you're cognizant of, taking some time for yourself when you have it, especially during the holiday season when things are already chaotic enough to throw a job search process into that. So I'll start with you, Tyrina. What are some of the ways that you coach the candidates, clients that you're working with when they come to you say, hey, I have 10, 14 days, however long it might be. I want to really prioritize my job search during this time. How do you coach them to do that while at the same time making sure they're still breathing and taking some time for themselves before class starts back up in January?
Yeah, I mean, once a client is onboarded with my company, we really try to make that job search a lot easier than if you're doing it on your own. Now, if you're doing it on your own, you definitely should have a strategy and a schedule. And that means don't just sit at your computer all day applying to jobs, like take breaks, maybe on an hour, off an hour, on an hour, off an hour. Or, you just say, you know what, I'm going to try to apply to as many in like an hour and a half, you know. But what we've done here at T Lassiter Services to make that easier is what I do a lot of studying on what people are saying on LinkedIn, or any socials that where the thread is talking about job applications, and I find that the longest part of it is tailoring your resume to every job application. And so we do master resumes where we make it a lot easier to showcase your skill sets where once you apply to many various jobs, you can just move things around instead of having to put new information on there every time. But we do have continued services, continued support services. And what that is specifically is once your resume is done, we will help you to make those tweaks and adjustments to every single job. And that's something new that we brought on this year. So if anyone ever becomes a client of mine, you have that support. But if you're doing it on your own, you don't have the funds to, hire a coach, you definitely want to pace yourself. You want to have a focus. Whenever I used to do free trainings on like narrowing down jobs, and I would tell people, listen, narrow down at least 3 to 6 roles in this job market. And so if you really want to hit the ground running when break comes up, just focus on 3. Tailor your resume to 3, and then just focus on those 3. I feel like where a lot of educators get overwhelmed is like, oh my gosh, I have the skills for this too, though. Like, I have the skills for like 20 jobs. You're going to burn yourself out. So, maybe focus on 3 for 1 month. And then maybe the next month you can focus on the next 3 or something like that. But it's having a focus is probably the primary tip that I would give when job searching, and actually block out time on your calendar and stick to that, because you're going to overwhelm yourself if you try to apply all day every day during your break. You want to spend time with your kids, you want to spend time with your partner if you have one, or family. So just have a set schedule every day. That's what I say.
And Katie, same question to you, and feel free to share some insight because you were in the education space, so what that winter break looks like too, and best laid plans going into this. Oh, I'm going to get all this stuff done, and then January 2nd's here, and you're like, oh, I did none of this. So, like, what
Yeah.
are some of the ways that you work with clients and candidates same way, and basing this off of your own experience and knowing how like time management and trying to make a schedule for yourself doesn't always work during that break.
Yeah. So everything Tyrina said, such great points. I like back up. I would agree with everything she said. When I was transitioning, I do remember saying, looking for a job is like having a second full-time job. And at that time, I was a middle school principal in a big school district outside of DC. So like it wasn't it there was a lot going on, but I right before we started this recording, Tyrina, we were saying like you have to commit to it. And I had my kids were pretty little at that time, elementary school age. I was a principal. I was job searching, but like if you're serious about it, you have to commit the time in. But like she said, work in pockets, set the goal of like I'm going to apply to 5 jobs today or whatever it is and make it manageable. A couple other things I was thinking about. One is if you're like a little earlier on in the process, winter break can be a great time to think about maybe like committees you're on or leadership positions you've held in the first part of the school year, because it's always good to keep that refreshed, because then when you're going to write your resume or working with a company like T Lassiter, like then they ask, oh, what leadership, and you're like I know at least for me, I forgot that I was on this like panel. Like I did a panel interview one time for like the district for actually, which is random, but like elevator companies. I learned so much about elevator companies that had a contract with our school district. And like they asked several building level principals to get perspective of like, like tell us about your need, because again, it's things you don't think about, but like dealing with kids, like access for all kids with disabilities, like so things you don't think about that are great leadership activities. That's a great time to reflect on that. And then the other thing, I know this sounds kind of weird, but during the holidays, there's a lot of gatherings, right? Like holiday parties or whatever. And I know it sounds like kind of crazy, but that's a great time to network, because potentially, like if you're at your spouse's holiday party, there's people that are maybe in the corporate world there. And you don't be overbearing, absolutely not. But like, hey, I'm actually looking for a new, float it out there. Because for me personally, when I got over the fear of like kind of floating it, like putting it out there in the universe instead of just keeping it to me, that's when the doors started to open. That's when people came back to me and they said, oh, I saw this job that looked like it might be a good fit. And I know the hiring manager. And I was just telling you guys before we hopped on the recording that I overheard a conversation this morning in a coffee shop with a gentleman saying, you can't get a job these days without having some sort of referral or connection, or you can't get an interview. Like it's so hard. Just so again, holidays are a great time when you're together with family and friends, and you can put it out there because people are willing to help, but you don't want to be pushy about it like in a weird context. But anyway, so those were two things that I was just thinking about. But I know like no one wants to work on their holiday on their break, but for me that was actually a time when I did a lot of my job search, because I didn't have the pressure of being in the building. Like I wasn't going to necessarily job search when I was doing my job. So like it's not fun, but if you're serious about it, again, we always say about telling the truth and being transparent, like it is a good time where you have some downtime. Balance it though with your life and having a great holiday season, but it is a good time to try to work on some of those behind the scenes stuff while you have the time.
Yeah, definitely. And perfect segue for the next question. And it's one that I think the three of us have discussed, and we certainly mentioned it prior to the show, is the networking aspect and just how important it is. I think the three of us have said you'll find there's a lot of people that are willing to help if you extend that question first. I mean, there's three people right here that I think answer messages pretty regularly with, "Hey, I could use some insight on the job search." But taking that first step, I think, I mean, you both said it before the show. That's kind of one of the biggest hurdles, and one that a lot of transitioning educators struggle with the most, just because those networking events, like the holiday party, is a great tip there. But, the networking events aren't as commonplace for educators. They're not necessarily going to like mixers and job mingles and stuff, whatever there is these days. I don't even know. That's how long it's been since I've done it. But those things aren't as commonplace. So now they
Mhm.
really have to rely on LinkedIn, other social media sites to start that networking, and it can be overwhelming. It can be daunting. So starting with you, Tyrina, how are some of the ways that you try to coach your clients to kind of get out of their shell from like a behind the screen standpoint? Because it's pretty easy. I say easy, it's more natural for educators to do the face-to-face interaction. They're used to do it every day. Communicating through a message on LinkedIn is not as common for them. They email parents and coworkers, but they're not sending those introductory messages often. So how do you coach them to start that process?
Yeah, so you're gonna laugh, and I don't even remember what commercial this is from. But in my head, I always think about, I don't know what commercial it is or what, set it and forget it.
Uh,
Set it and forget it. So when I am coaching teachers on networking, especially those ones who are brand new to LinkedIn, like if they got LinkedIn optimization services, from my company, and we've updated their LinkedIn profile, their banner, their about section, we got like some really good keywords in there. Um, that's always good to make sure you're on brand with all your documents and your platform, right? But then when it comes to having to like connect and reach out, they get scared. They're like, what if they don't reply to me? And I'm just like, well, you can't think about that. Send the message and forget it. Set it and forget it. Move on to the next application. And then they're like, well, what do I say? And so I help each and every one of my clients write a script so they can just fill it in. You literally copy and paste, and then you fill it in with the recruiter's name or whoever you're connecting with its name. And then you talk about your transferable skills. You talk about maybe your interests of working for the company, or the company has always been on their dream list. And I feel that when I give them that goal of like just connect with 2 people a day, just stick to that. Try to do 2 people a day, and it gets it, and they get used to it, and then they start to like it, because they're starting to have these meaningful and fruitful conversations with people, whether it's people that work at the company or you're just trying to get more insight, whether it is a recruiter that's hiring for a role. They just have to, whenever you're doing something new, it's scary, but as you continue to do it, it gets a little better. I also encourage my clients to be proactive, even if it's a company that you desire to work for eventually, and they're not hiring for any positions that either you have the qualifications for or they're not hiring at all. It's still great to be proactive. You can introduce yourself to a recruiter or a hiring manager or someone at the company to get some insight and just say, hey, I'm looking for these are my transferable skills. This is what I'm looking for. If you're ever hiring for these type of roles, here, keep my resume on file.
Mhm.
Those type of things, trying to get ahead of the game a little bit, it helps as well, because when they are hiring, guess what? They may keep you in mind first,
Mhm.
so it's just about getting used to networking online. I mean, in my head, and and it's all about perspective. It's all about your, your experiences with speaking with people, and a lot of teachers that I work with, they've worked with children. Maybe they haven't worked with adults, and they're like, oh, adults are scary. What if, what if they don't respond? Or what if I don't like what they say? But it's so funny that a lot of my clients, they're like more introverted, and they're like, I don't want to network. And I'm just like, if LinkedIn was how it is now, back when I first started in my career, oh my gosh, like the trajectory of my career would have went even faster, because I would be able to connect with like 50 people a day if I wanted.
Yeah.
And I am a true in-person networker at heart, so I try to just shift their mindset to thinking of it that way, that you can reach out to more people at one time than you having to speak to people in person initially, so it's just all about shifting that mindset when it comes to networking.
Yeah, absolutely. And same question to you, Katie. And again, it's
Mhm.
share insight from your own personal experience, because I know you're no stranger to sending cold messages. I'm certainly not. That's how both of you ended up on this podcast. So
Yeah.
it's something that has to be done. So how did you kind of break out of your shell?
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I was reflecting when Tyrina was talking about, so when I was an assistant principal and I knew I had aspirations to be a principal, I remember like I've always enjoyed networking because to me it's like, I don't want to say a puzzle, but it's so interesting, like who knows who and who is intertwined. So I was thinking about it at the time. I was a high school assistant principal and had a great relationship with my building level principal. And he went to monthly principal meetings. And I knew at the time I wanted to be a middle school assistant principal. I mean, I'm sorry, a middle school principal, not high school. So I knew I needed some middle school experience. So to me, like follow me, but like to me, it's all very similar to a job search, any job search. So at one point, like I said, hey, do you know, I saw this job was going to be open at XYZ school. Would you mind like putting in a good word for me with their principal? Or, like somehow we started talking about that because he knew I was going to apply there and whatever. And so he did. He put in a good word and said, hey, one of my assistant principals, Katie, I think is going to apply for the job at your school. She's definitely worth a look, blah, blah, blah. So like, I'm just thinking how like, that's how like I probably gotten in. I mean, of course, my reputation, my resume, and all that stuff is important.
Sure.
But when a respected principal talked to another respected principal and said, "Hey, give this person a look," and then it was up to me, right? Then you get your interview, and that's up to you, right? But like those relationships matter, and you always have to be thinking like, and I know it's not for everyone, but you always have to be thinking like, oh, wait a second, like that person works at, Capital One. I've always been interested in working there. Like, and to me, networking, I think I was also reflecting on this. Like, sometimes I think the cold messages, while I don't mind doing them, I think those are the ones you tend to get less responses to. So the only reason I say that is because sometimes it's like, I love the three-way message where it's like, hey, Tyrina, like I'm going to include you on this message with Matt and introduce you guys and
Mhm.
then let you take it from there. Like so many people have done that. Like with like introducing transitioning teachers to me, and I'm 100 times more likely to respond in a timely manner if like my friend Matt includes me and someone else on an email because like, oh, I'm friends with Matt, like I don't want to let him down, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I find that is a really effective way to network. If you're like, but a stranger's not just going to give you an intro. Like that's, I mean, they might,
Yeah.
but it's a lot less likely. So that's where I say like I can't remember, somebody used a term. It might have been one of you guys, but it's like reach out to your like, I don't want to say like cold acquaintances, but someone that like you kind of know that
Yeah.
could maybe link you with someone, but or people you do know. But like it's all kind of a game and it's an art, to be honest.
It really is.
Networking is an art. And you don't
Mm,
just want to ask a random stranger for a favor. Because
right.
like what do they owe you? I mean, sure, you can introduce yourself, but like right off the bat, asking them for something to me is not the best way. Like I love that three-way intro. I
Mhm.
find that like so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if any way you can like I don't know. Again, it's all just about like planting seeds and building relationships and not being afraid. Like you said, Tyrina, like, what was it? Set it and leave it? Or what was
Yeah, set it
it?
and forget
Yeah,
it. Like
set it and forget it. Yes. Like,
building that rapport with
don't worry if someone doesn't
yeah,
get back to you, just move on. But use the network you do have to kind of
mm-hmm.
try to like get introduced to a new person that way.
Yeah,
Um, I
yeah.
don't know, just some thoughts, but that really worked for me
Mm-hmm.
when I was also transitioning. Like some of my friends who had been in corporate, they're the ones who gave me those intros or got me those interviews. Or I think I might have mentioned this one time before, but a company I interviewed with was a company that our school system worked with.
Oh
That
yeah.
came in and did professional development. And so I reached out to a girl that I knew that did trainings for us that I built kind of a relationship with. And I was like, hey, I'm going to apply for this job at your company. Could you? And she was like, oh my gosh, I'll put in a good,
Yes.
it's
One of
just,
my clients did that. One of my clients did that.
yeah,
She was like she was a part of the training committee for her school, and a representative came in and introduced them or helped them with the adoption of like an IXL
yeah,
curriculum that they adopted. And when her resume was done by our company, she reached right back because she had a rapport with her. She reached out to her, sent her the resume, and she
exactly
got
what
an
I
interview
did.
like the next day.
That's
You
exactly
know?
what I did. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah,
okay to do those things. Like, and I think some teachers feel guilty. You got to get over that because you
you
can
really
still
do.
do it in a professional way and still do your day job to like, with fidelity, but there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah.
Be professional, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I wanted to jump into some of the common questions that I get, some of the ones that you get that, during this break, people can really take some time to look into it. And I'll start posing this one to the two of you just because I never have the right answer for this question, and I always feel bad saying like I don't know.
yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know, and that's centered around candidates who ask, what should I do about pursuing additional trainings, additional certifications? Should I pursue this or this? My common advice is usually like if you can financially do it and you think it will be beneficial, do what makes sense for you. But I also, everyone has a budget. No one wants to spend unnecessary money ever. And to say that, oh yeah, do this because it's going to get you a job, there's no guarantees there. So
No.
I'll start with you, Tyrina. Not necessarily what's your advice there, but feel free to share that. But have you heard of any like specific trainings or certifications that people have come to you and said, "Hey, this was really helpful for me. It's very cost efficient, stuff like that, as maybe an alternative they can explore."
Yeah. I actually got that question yesterday from a client that just got onboarded. She inboxed me on LinkedIn after she officially hired us in purchase services, and she said, "Do you think it's worth me getting?" I think it was like a project management certification. That seems to be like one of the amongst like the most
Yeah, they
popular.
are one of
And then the other one is like if you want to be like a data analyst, like
them.
those type of certifications too. But I told her, I said, don't do it until you're absolutely sure it's necessary. Whenever any of my clients are onboarded, I help them narrow down roles and we look at job descriptions like together. And what I say is the best rule of thumb is that most of the job descriptions that you're looking at, if you see a trend of them asking for like a certain certification, then yeah, go for it. But I mean, and like you said, to your point too, like if you have the money to do it, I mean, knowledge is power. It's always good to upskill and educate yourself even more. I mean, I've even done it, after I've officially graduated and had a successful career in corporate. But I don't in these times in this economy, if you don't have to, don't do it, but as a career coach for educators, I will always tell them like you need to invest in a training for instructional design, because instructional design is very niched, and there are quite a few tools and techniques that you need to know if you really want to pursue that, especially if you've done everything else. Like updated your resume, you have a really solid portfolio.
Mhm.
But there's like, the Addy model, and like, just like, there's just so many things under that umbrella that you should know.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't do it if you don't really need to. If you just want the knowledge and you want to, oh wow, like I really want to do this project management course, because a lot of them are self-paced.
Mhm.
So a lot of them do that way, but they can be really expensive. So I suggest, don't do it unless it's absolutely necessary. For the meanwhile, you can just educate yourself with like some free trainings. If you have LinkedIn Premium, do some trainings on there, because they're included with the premium. Connect with some people that are already in like project management or instructional design or anything like that. um, it's a really tough market out there, and I don't want anyone to invest all this money thinking that they're going to get a job,
Right.
like that, because they have a certification.
Mhm.
So just be careful with that. But it is great to talk to someone who's been in the field, or a career coach like myself, to guide you on whether you should or invest or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And same question to you, Katie. I mean, what's usually the insight that you share? Because I'm sure you get that a lot
Yeah.
with the
I
client.
get this question a lot too. And I tend to agree with you guys. Like, unless I'll be honest, I did not do any trainings.
Hmm.
I felt like, honestly, if someone likes you as a person and you as your skills, they're going to pay for you to get whatever certification or training you need, like once they hire you. Now, of course, there are exceptions, like you just said. Like sometimes I know, like you mentioned project management. I see that a lot. Like you must have this certification, like
Yeah.
the project management certification. But to me, it's just there's so many different trainings, and some companies want this specific brand of training. Like,
Hmm.
so to me, I think time is probably better spent networking, or like you said, reaching out to a person in instructional design or learning and development, or something like that, than the trainings. And of course, like you said, there are the free trainings and stuff like that, but I don't know if it's going to make someone stand out that much more than like a referral would,
Mhm.
because I'm way more likely to hire someone that like Matt recommends than someone that I don't know, like that maybe he knows or
Mhm.
knows of or something, than someone that just looks good on paper and has all these certificates and training. Because like, I don't mean to say this, but like anyone can kind of go out and do that,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
anyone can go out and get that. But so again, if you have the resources and the time, and like you said, knowledge is power. So if it really interests you and you're genuinely want to learn more about that in the way of a course, absolutely, it's not going to hurt.
Mhm.
But I don't know how much it helps
Right.
for like the cost analysis, because like you said, a lot of them can be expensive, and I feel like if I had to pick, I'd rather spend money on someone helping me tailor my resume, like
Yeah.
you, than
Yeah.
than upskilling.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But that's just, so I'm kind of like, I think we're all, it's a weird question, because
Yeah.
you don't know, like
Yeah.
you don't know what a certain company or position is going to need or want. But that's why I don't know if it's the smartest thing to just, and I think sometimes people who just like upskill, like, I don't know, to me that looks a little weird. Like, I'm like, oh, you got all these certifications.
Like random
Yeah,
certifications.
like, do you have a passion? I don't know. Like, to
Yeah.
Yeah.
me, even like I saw something about like volunteering, or like going in and seeing if you could do like, I don't know, like you could go in and do an internship over the holiday. Like, again, something where like,
Mm.
hey, I'm interested in real estate. Could I come shadow you for a day? Like, and
Yes. Yeah.
like that to me is better time well spent, because it'll open doors for networking and it'll give you on the job training. And I remember, like we always say in teaching, like all our teaching classes were great, but you didn't really learn what was important until you were thrown into that
Until you
classroom.
did
And
it.
then you learned
Mhm.
classroom management like nothing they ever taught you. Like, so to me, like the on the job training is often more valuable than the
Yeah.
upskilling. the other side.
That's
So.
why I've always been a strong advocate for experience over like certifications and additional degrees.
Yeah.
And I know the work for like the job market is so different than when we were younger. You know,
Totally.
when both of you were first, got into teaching, and when because I started working in college. I was in corporate working part-time while I was in college. And then I went, of course, full time after I graduated. But because I got a lot of my jobs by just highlighting my transferable skills, networking about who I knew,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't have to get like an additional degree or certifications in order to get these roles. I speak from experience and with that question that Matt asked about like upskilling or getting certifications, because it is about it is more about that the experience you have, because you can get a PMP, but then if you've never used any of the tools that they use in that field, you just having that on your resume is not going to be enough. Now,
Exactly.
even though I feel
Yeah.
like educators wear many hats, you are project managers,
Totally.
your trainers, your counselors, your advocates, your mothers, your fathers for those 6 hours. So it is a tricky question, and you just have to use your discernment and reach out to some professionals to really figure out what the right thing to do is. So.
Yeah. This is why I love having you two on the show, because you always set me up for the perfect segue to the next topic. And this is one that we've all discussed it in the past, in terms of the transferable skills. But I wanted to touch on it again because Tyrina, you mentioned early, like that they see initially they're like, I don't know what skills I have that can translate into something new. And then when they have that discussion, they see they have so many, and then it kind of can get chaotic. Like you said, they say, oh, well, there's 20 positions that I think I feel qualified for. And you and I have talked before, shoot your shot, but make sure you're hitting the rim.
Yeah.
So, how do you find that discussion to help them decide and determine which skills are going to be most valuable to a future employer, and be most valuable to, what they want to do with their careers, and not just kind of go crazy with the applications?
Yeah, well, a lot of times, like I said earlier, when we're looking at job descriptions, I can kind of tell and get a feel of what they don't want to do and what they do want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my first questions that I ask when I initially meet my clients when they're onboarded, I say, is there anything that you don't want to do in your next role? And sometimes they're just like, they're still so focused on what they were doing as a teacher, they don't know how to translate it. So like, for example, they say, I don't want to do lesson plans. I'm like, well, you're not going to do lesson plans in corporate. So how I translate that is maybe like, you just don't want to do like content or build curriculum, or you don't mind presenting it. You just don't want to have to be the creator of it, right? And so in that aspect, there are a lot of training and learning and development positions where you do not have to build that curriculum. So I'm like, okay, so let's build off of that. Mm-hmm. So I think your 3 roles should be learning and development, maybe an implementation specialist, where you're going to different schools, helping them to adopt the curriculum. Even though you're not the one building the curriculum, you're just making sure that the school has implemented it properly. And then like customer success is another good one too, where you're just checking in and just making sure that they understand everything about what they adopted. You're there to ask, answer any questions, so on and so forth. So I feel like it's really important to ask those really good prompting questions to help them narrow down the roles. And then we can shift to, okay, so this is what your transferable skill is for this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. You don't want to go after those other 20 roles that you mentioned earlier. That's too much. You're going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then we can have a focus for the resume as well. And then it's also helpful too, because then your mind isn't all jumbled with all of these skills mm-hmm. that is going to be necessary for you to talk about in an interview. Mm-hmm. You have to have a focus. You have to make sure that your words are coming out good. You're not, crisscrossing your skills and everything, because you've just researched so many roles. Like your brain, yes, it's a tool, it's a muscle, but it also can be overworked, so you, again, like I guess the key word of this session is focus. You have to have a focus. But that's also the reason why we like to do, and I keep emphasizing this in all of my content, narrowing down roles and having a master resume so that it's not as difficult for you to make tweaks along the way. And we try to make it as easy as possible to like remove information or move information around. It is very rare where we have to like add totally brand new information because we've already tailored the resume to what we were focusing on. And then it's a lot easier for people to speak, to their transferable skills and just stick to that for quite some time.
And same question to you, Katie. And I know that's a little different because you're already working with clients who have an understanding of the type of candidates that you're going to be working with and sending them. But still, you want to make sure that, like Tyrina said, you're maintaining that focus. So how do you ensure that and make sure that the positions that you're presenting are going to appeal to the candidates that you're
Yeah,
working
absolutely. I think what she said at the beginning, she like hit it on the head, like hit the nail on the head is like you have to have that focus. And I think I don't remember one time I said like, or someone told me, and I included this to a lot of my teachers, they say, think about what you like in your job now and
Mm-hmm.
what you don't like. And that, as you were talking, Tyrina, it made me think back to what I enjoyed in the classroom and as an administrator and what I didn't. And I did not like anything when I was teaching with curriculum. Like, I don't want
Mm.
to look at curriculum. I don't want to like be on the curriculum committee. I'll implement it. And I loved like coming up with the presentations and coming up, and when I was a principal, I loved presenting new initiatives to the staff and then having us go through learning experiences to learn that. So like you really have to think about what you like and what you don't and channel that. And then another thing I was thinking that was just, this is not exactly answering your question, Matt, but like a practical tip, like, so I was thinking back, like, how did I first like start liking recruiting and all that? And I was thinking like from even when I was a teacher, a couple times, I don't know how it came about. I must have been asked to sit on hiring committees. And that's kind of how I first got into like and that's something you could approach your administration about and say, hey, the next time you do some interviews over the summer, could I sit in and be a part of the panel? And
with.
that's how they needed like a teacher representative. I know a couple times when they were interviewing for different positions at my school at the time when I was a high school teacher. So I started to sit on those. And then as I went into administration, then I was like running those interviews. And then or with the principal. And then when I was a principal, I really was running them and I
Mm,
was formulating the questions. And so I think like a lot of it is you don't think about, like if you're a teacher and you want to go into recruiting, ask about sitting in on some of those panels because then when you're sitting in an interview, nothing's better than being able to give an example and say, oh, I sat in on 3 interview processes this year, and here's what I learned, and here's why I feel like I excel at that. And that's your experience, right? While
mm,
it's not corporate hiring, it's the same thing. Like running an interview and sitting in there and asking questions and discerning who's the best candidate and fit for the job. You can talk about your passion, but I think a lot of my transitioning teachers fall short in the interview process because they don't have examples. And you have to think of your transferable skills and something you did. Again, whether it's like you led a team meeting or you helped write curriculum for like I was a Spanish teacher, the Spanish 3 curriculum, whatever is your niche and focus, like you said, Tyrina, that's where you have to also start to get those experiences. Like what's going to set you apart is like being on that committee or sitting in on those, again, like those elevator interviews, which I know sounds so silly, but like that was an experience where the school system had a big contract for 32 schools with an elevator company, which is a big deal. Like you can't have your elevator malfunctioning with students in the, like, but getting that experience, it was so interesting to me. Like it was a completely different corporate experience. You
Mm.
can seek out those opportunities. You just have to talk to different people and talk to your administration. And I don't see anything wrong with saying I'd love to get some experience with interviewing. You don't need to tell your whole story, like if
right.
you're
Right.
telling them that you want to leave, but like I just think it's important, to really try to like figure out what you love doing, then talk about those transferable skills, and then try to get some experience outside of just like in your classroom, but like whether it's leading a team or presenting to your staff on this, or even just presenting to a group of 3 teachers, or leading a team meeting, or collecting data. If you love data, like we had data meetings all the time with students and their progress, like highlight those in your resume. But that's where like I think winter break is a great time to think about all those things you're doing that you don't even realize you're doing, but you
Mhm.
have to like quantify them and put them into
Yeah.
writing. You can't
Yeah.
just like, you have to, and like you said, have a focus, um, and then start to give some examples, because that's what's going to set you apart.
Right.
And some feedback I got one time from a company that was interviewing a teacher was that she just wasn't very specific. Like she had great
Mhm.
answers and they were great, but like no meat, like no example of how you did it. And I also just heard something on Instagram that was like, don't say we, even if you were on a team of, even if like me and Matt presented to the staff, just say I presented to the staff. Nobody cares about Matt in your interview. Unless it's asking, did you work with a partner and how did you collaborate and all that? Like, highlight, don't be
Yes.
afraid. And teachers, I feel like shy away from that. Like,
I was gonna say, I like that is such a good point, because a lot of times when I'm meeting with educators, like, do you have experience doing this? Like, yeah, kind of, but like I had a meeting with a client yesterday. We were doing interview prep. She has an interview coming up, and I said, have you ever did or led a team? And she said, yeah, I do trainings for like my team of 3 on the Spanish team. And I'm like, don't belittle that. Like, that's a we can make that grand when you're in the interview. Like, that's still a major thing. And to your point, like, Katie, that was such a good point that you made. Like, don't say we, like, say I led a training. You don't have to say 3 teachers. You can just say a group of teachers.
Mhm.
They don't know it was only 1 or 2 other, but it's still a major thing. It's still a
Right.
major thing. Like, no transferable skill is too small.
Right. Yeah. So last question, and this is, part two of probably like a 12-part series because
As
there's
always, right?
always a lot of meat left on the bone. But I did want to go over, because it's also a question I get a lot, and this is for myself. I took a step back in salary when I made my initial move, just to get that fresh start. It wasn't significant. It was a step back, but it wasn't like a giant leap backwards. But I get that question a lot. And ideally, you don't want anyone to take that step back. And Tyrina, I see a lot of your success stories where they're taking a significant step forward in salary. So kudos to you.
It's
Uh,
very rare they take salary cuts, but
yeah,
I did too. That's funny. The 2 people here did. I did.
yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you approach that conversation? Because it is something that they may have to prepare for. Ideally, they want to get out of the classroom, try something new, but not, move away from where they are now, because they have a lifestyle, they have bills, possibly children, family that they need to provide for. So it's not always realistic for them to take that step back. For me at the time, I think I was just married, so we didn't have a family at that point. We had our house, so it wasn't like we were saving up for something
Mhm.
like that. So I was in a position where I was able to, but I'm also aware that that's not a position that everyone is in. So how do you approach that conversation? Prepare them, for what might be realistically something that they have to accept, while at the same time, working with them to find out what that point is, what's that bottom line that you can take in terms of a step back to prepare for it.
Yeah, honestly, I with building that trust and rapport with my clients when they, first come aboard, I have to ask them to be transparent.
Mm.
I ask them if they have savings. I ask them, like, what's your minimum that you could possibly take? I know you don't want to pay cut. And like I said earlier, like it is rare that when my clients get jobs, they take a significant pay cut. It's either around what they were making, like maybe exactly what they were making, or more. But I have had a couple that have taken maybe like a 5K pay cut, like something that's not too crazy. Um, So the first thing is like I encourage them. I say, listen, because a lot of times when teachers reach out, they have had enough, and they are so overwhelmed.
Mhm.
They're depleted emotionally. They have to get out. And I say, listen, let's come up with a plan to get you out now. Like your first job out of your transition is, I guarantee, it's probably not going to be your forever job. A lot of people luck out, and then they do. I do have clients when I first started coaching educators that they're still at those jobs. Like I'm going into my fourth year, 4 years later, they're still there. But in this world, in this job market, it is rare that people have like super longevity. So the first thing I say, like, listen, we need to just get you out, because here's the thing: there is no amount of money that is worth your mental health. And I don't want you to go from one stressor to the next, because then you'll be stressed financially. We don't want that. But let's come up with a plan. Let's come up with what is your bottom line as far as what you can take. And then they'll let me know. I say, okay, so that we need to factor that into the roles that you take, because I know from my experience, I love getting teachers into learning and development roles. They pay really well on the corporate side.
Mhm.
Not saying that ed tech doesn't pay, but like for the training titles on the ed tech side are usually like customer success or implementation specialist or something like that,
Mhm.
or a literacy specialist, or a subject matter expert on like a math curriculum or something. But I say, okay, so then we need to open up your opportunities to be open to, the corporate side, because I feel like if you want to make this money, the money that you want to make, you need to go on this side. But I also, talk to them about, would you be okay with working at a job for a slight pay cut for maybe like 6 months, and then we come back to the table and reevaluate, and they'll let me know like, yeah, I can do that, and some can't,
Yeah.
and I have to be real with them, and I say, listen, everybody's timeline is different for their transition. Okay. We are going to help and continue to support you, like my with my services, regardless of what service you purchase. We support you until you transition, and no extra costs. We will continue to meet with you. We continue to help you tweak your resume. But that's it. It is a tough conversation to have when you have to let them know about the reality of certain things, and it's very case by case scenario, and it's very rare that I have to have that conversation, because T Lassiter Services is really good at bringing out those transferable skills, even if it's like something small that they've done. Um, but I've had clients come on calls crying, and they just want to get out.
Yeah.
So it's an important, if you're a professional and you're guiding, whether it's teachers or anyone in their transition, you have to have that conversation and be real about it and be transparent about it, because there are a lot of things that are out of your control, but you got to gauge where their mindset is. I always bring up the story of that one teacher that transitioned out, and she's working at Costco, and she's making more money than she did as a teacher, and I'm like, maybe we can work on like a bridge job until you find your forever job where you're making even more money.
Mhm.
You can retail, supermarkets, and it's the holiday season too. They're hiring like crazy now for help.
Right.
So, I just try to think of full circle of all possibilities, all aspects, so that they aren't too strained financially, but you also have to be, transparent about it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. And same question to you, Katie.
Yep. So, so I say I was an administrator, so I did take a pay cut because obviously my salary was a little higher.
Yeah.
Um, but a couple tips. One, in the corporate world, and this was something I was not used to, salary is negotiable. So the salary that the company that I got a job at advertised, they came up like I think like $30,000. Like it was I'm pretty sure, like, and to me, my mind was blown. It actually still is. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Um, Now I don't know if I don't think that's the norm, but I'm just saying, like,
That's a no.
salary is negotiable. And if they value your transferable skills, and they realize, then they will be willing to budge. Now, the candidates I've worked with, the teachers, it's not like that, but I'm just giving an example. But they have been able to negotiate $10,000 up from whatever the advertise. They're not going to advertise more than that. Like, it's a company's got a bottom line, right? So like if they can get you for 60 grand, they're going to do that. But if you come back and say, I really need to be in the $75,000 ballpark, can we make that work? So salary is negotiable. Two, a lot of companies have bonuses. So there's bonuses at the holiday times. So those are things you could, like potentially make up a difference. Sometimes benefits are paid for by the company. So even if you're getting a little bit of a pay cut, if they pay your insurance, that well makes up for it.
Yeah.
Another thing, like you talked about, was mental health. What if you have you're going from being a teacher to like only having to go into the office 1 or 2 days a week if it's a hybrid position, or if it's closer to you and you're saving money on gas. So like sometimes you got to think of the outside the box things that might, um, make up for certain things if you can make ends meet. Now, sometimes you can't make ends meet, and obviously like that, like Matt was saying, like he didn't have kids at the time, so like he could do that. And then the other point I want to make too is that in corporate, and this could be a great question to ask in the interview process, is there a potential for growth? Because a lot of companies, you can grow so much quicker than you can in education. Like in education, there are salary scales that stay in place for the
Mhm.
most part until you leave. Maybe you get a cost of living bump, but like that's not really helping. So just keep in mind, like you could get a promotion within a year when they see how amazing you are and how your skills are, so you're overqualified probably for positions. So like corporate is way different
Yeah.
salary wise, salary structure, financial structure than education is. So just keep those things in mind. And the negotiating thing is so awkward. I still think it's awkward. And a lot of my transitioning teachers, and they often ask me, like, well, how do I say it? And I'm like, well, just say this. I need to be in the, I would love this off, like if they've gotten an offer, but it's low, say, I really need to get to around 80,000 for my, to make this work for my family. I'm so excited about this opportunity. Is there any way, that we can make this work or come to a common ground? And I mean, honestly, I think every single time the company has come back and said yes, because usually transitioning teachers aren't asking for a crazy salary. So they're happy with like, which is sad on another front, but I just think just to keep in mind, like Matt said, like sometimes, if it's a little bit of a cut, maybe, but you're getting in, like you said, Tyrina, you're getting your foot in the door, or there's potential for growth, or your benefits are paid for. There's some things that you have to weigh, like, or maybe you're working from home, like, hello, you're saving a lot of money eating out. Like I know I save so much money, like eating out, gas. I don't do those things that I did when I was having to commute and sit in traffic every day. So, and I would never pack my lunch because I wanted to go out every day and
Yeah.
all this stuff. So just, it's always an interesting topic, and you obviously need to make an informed decision for your family. I wouldn't say, obviously, you don't want to be stressed about money, like you said, Tyrina,
Yeah.
but go
Going
into
from
it,
one stressor to the next.
yes, go into it realizing, like
Yeah.
you might need to be a little flexible at first.
Yeah.
And then or an open mind to different things, and maybe there is a bonus or that you didn't know about, and so you can make it work until you get your bonus around the holidays, because a lot of people do it at the holidays. So
Yep.
Absolutely. All right. So before I let both of you go, I mean, you both have services that you offer and different social media pages that you're very active on, more active than I am. I'm limited to LinkedIn now. I should probably up my Instagram game, but so go ahead and plug, where people can find you, where they can follow you. Obviously, you'll be tagged on LinkedIn, but other pages that you're active on and the services that you provide. We'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Ed Transition Navigator. I post a lot on there. I post a lot of reels, and those reels are really based on who's hiring now. And I find that Instagram, that's the kind of information that a lot of teachers need. They need to know, like, okay, so where do I go to find jobs? Like, who's hiring teachers? And I'm like, well, you know, those curriculum companies that you use, they are always hiring, so try that first. But there's quite a few job boards that
You
I
post
really
some great
love.
ones. Yes.
Yeah, those,
Yeah.
and you and both of you, as I post this website a lot, let me give her a plug. Chelsea created edskip.com, and
Yes. It's
talking
amazing.
about salary, if you don't want anything lower than, I think she does like 60 or 60, nothing lower than 60 or 65K. Man, that is like a one-stop shop for you.
Yes.
The subscription is very reasonable. It's like $36 for 3 months. You know, and she pushes out a newsletter every month. Like it's such a great resource for educators. I'm always looking for more resources. So
Mhm.
yeah, check me out on the LinkedIn at Tyrina Lassiter. Of course, you'll tag us, and then on Instagram is Ed Transition Navigator. I'm always posting, you know, EdSkip, and edtech.com is a good one, another good one. And then my website is www.tlassiterservices.com. If you follow me on any of those socials, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram, you can go to my bio, and you'll be able to see, you know, the links for my websites and everything. But we offer resume services, LinkedIn optimization, interview coaching, as well as continued support until you transition at no extra cost. So if you're interested in getting services because you are ready to transition, especially with the unknown of what's going on in education right now, you really don't know if you'll have a job, or if there's like too many changes that are going to make your job, you know, a lot harder.
Mhm.
Definitely, let's just start a conversation on any of the social media platforms or on my website too. On my website, there is a chat feature at the bottom. If you click that button, one of my staff members will reply to you with any of for any answers that you need as far as your questions are concerned.
Awesome. And my website, so the name of my recruiting company is Recruit Ed. So it's like recruited, but it's recruitedllc.com is my website. And I'm also on Instagram. My handle's at recruited LLC. I've actually taken a little bit of a step back on Instagram because I am looking for more corporate partnerships. So if anyone out there in the web knows anyone that is hiring and needs amazing candidates. I'm always looking for more corporate partners because and transitioning educators, both of them. But obviously, we need the jobs to fill those get those people in great places. But yes, so always looking for connections and willing to share my story and help out people. And just really appreciate Matt this opportunity. I love chatting with you guys, so thank you.
Yes, my two of my favorite people.
I know. I
Yeah,
love it. I love talking. I always learn so much too, like from both of
yeah,
you. Makes me like really
same.
reflect. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep, it's always a good roundtable discussion, and it always goes long, and that's a good thing. So,
yes.
thank you both for jumping on here with me. Like I said, this is not going to be the last time that the three of us collaborate. So, look forward to that. Otherwise, enjoy your holiday season. Take some time for yourself. Self care is so
Really
important.
will. You too, Matt. Thank you.
Happy
Bye,
holidays.
guys.